ClancyPasta presents Business is Business, written by Kale N. Ryan 13. The night was so cold my ass cheeks were frozen to the concrete. It was just above zero. In the day, I'd found another bonfire to sustain myself with. There were two other homeless with me. The one who called himself Kenny started coughing during a break in the conversation. He rolled over and his tongue slithered out of his mouth. The other, Elise, felt Kenny's pulse as he laid there. No blood flowed through his veins anymore. Night fell with time. I tried to convince Elise to leave the bonfire with me. She wouldn't. The streets were crowded, dangerous. I went around in circles, taking my usual route. There weren't any other homeless out in the streets, I noticed. A group of high schoolers was hovering around the entrance of a building, some of their hands in their coat pockets, the rest holding jewels and cigarettes. One snickered as I passed by. I was facing a couple of storefronts, both unlit and closed. I wiped the snot icicle dripping from my nostril with an unsteady hand. I felt my body with my hand, thin, pale, freezing. There was no blanket to shield myself. I thought, it's my last night. Racked with shivers, I tried to get comfortable. The ice underneath my ass cracked as I moved. I dug my hands into my beard and tried to warm them up. They just got colder with the frozen hairs. I thought about the last time I almost froze. It was just before sunrise, a year or two before that night, and a group of middle schoolers were out for a walk. One noticed me, chuckled, and said, "It's Jack Frost!" I glared at the kid, shot him a devilish grin, yellow teeth bared. His smirk turned into a dropped jaw. Somewhere down the street, car tires rolled against the pavement. I turned my head and coughed. A cloud of mist floated in the air before disappearing. And God saves me again for some fucking reason, I giggled to myself. The car, a tomato red Porsche, pulled up the block, ignoring a red light. The license plate read 3MP1R3, or Empire. The Porsche stopped in front of me. The lights cut out as the locks clicked. A second later, the driver's door opened and a man revealed himself. He was dressed in a white suit, clean-shaven, and had a few age lines across his forehead and cheeks. The man flashed a coy smile, slammed the door shut behind him, and started to saunter towards me. "Evening there," he called. I coughed again, another cloud of mist floating into the air. "Evening, sir. Begging for food?" I joked. The man laughed. He stopped in front of me, still smiling. "Surprised you aren't already begging me. You ought to see my pantry." I scoffed. "I'd love to." "What's your name?" asked the man. The air started to feel colder. Excited chills coursed through me. "Pat, sir. Pat Miller. What brings you here?" The man's eyes seemed to glow when I asked, "How badly do you want to live, Pat?" "Sir," I began, "I'd do anything." The man extended a hand. I grabbed his and he yanked me up. I started to get dizzy and spun around for a second, rebalancing. "Good," he started, "'cause I've got a job for you." I grinned at the man. Haven't had one of those in a while. The man smirked a little. Then the moonlight glimmered on one half of his face, and the other was dark. His expression spoke to me. "Let's talk business, now." "Hope you're ready, Pat," he muttered. "You won't be mopping floors with what we're doing." What do you mean?" He looked as rigid as a soldier. "You'll find out," he said. "There's a burger in the passenger seat. Hope it's still warm for you." Scowling, I limped to the opposite side of the car, ripped the door open, and grabbed the burger with both hands. I tore a bite out of it and wolfed it down. I was still eating as I clambered into the car. After I finished chewing a bite, I shut the door. The man, seated next to me, watched all of this with a smile. Then he gave me the business look again, and he started selling the idea to me. "There's no better way to lead into this, Pat," he said. "I need you to kill somebody." I was in the middle of a bite, but I stopped chewing and licked my lips and around my mouth, stared at him, and felt more of those chills flutter through me. It's that feeling you get when you're madly in love. It wasn't quite fear, though. "So, you don't think you're up to the task?" the man wondered. I swallowed a full bite and breathed out. "Give me some details first." The man put a hand on my shoulder. "I like the way you think, just like a businessman. You know how deals are done." I slipped my tongue over my teeth and tore a nibble of beef from between them. "So, you aren't even gonna ask how I found you?" I shrugged and took another bite. The man laughed again. "I'll start talking then. I'm sure you're tired of living on these streets. They're dangerous, not just in the normal sense. Bet you've heard all the urban legends about the city's beast." I believe him. I nodded my head, grinning. The man seemed to wince when he saw a bit of onion stuck between my teeth. "You need food and a job. I can provide all of that for you. You heard of Lancaster real estate?" "Yeah," I said, a mouthful of burger still in my jaws. "Well, guess who you're talking to right now?" My eyes widened. "George Lancaster?" I asked. He chuckled. "You're damn right. So, here's the job. Open that glove box." I reached down and pulled the handle. Inside the drawer was a glistening knife. "Christ," I muttered. Lancaster sneered. "I'm sure you've heard of Mrs. Lancaster, too. I made her the face of my company for a reason, instead of me. Men can't keep themselves away from her." "She's beautiful, Mr. Lancaster." "I'd thank you if you weren't killing her tonight," said Lancaster. I choked on a hunk of beef, coughed, then swallowed, and went down easy. Shocker, I know. "Why? What happened?" I asked. Lancaster's smile faded. His lower lip pursed underneath his upper. He drew in a long breath through his nostrils. The vein that ran across his temple looked like it might burst open and spray blood all over the leather interior. "So, speaking of men that can't keep themselves away from my wife," Lancaster began, "Donna couldn't keep herself away from one of these men." I reached a hand out to put on his shoulder. He flinched as it met his suit and pulled away. "I'm okay, I'm alright, but I'm angry," Lancaster said. "Pretty damn angry. This man happens to be my rival from Donovan Schumacher. Schumacher's dead already. Heart attack 4 years ago. But Donovan, that sly bastard's been fucking the same hole as I for 3 years, and I didn't know till a month ago." I took a slow bite and chewed with care. The last bite was a little cold. "Donovan's not my rival because he's successful. It's because he's good, and soon enough he will be successful. He'll probably overtake me even if I'm not careful. And since he doesn't have the funds he needs yet, Donna's been taking money from our joint account and sending it off to him. I found all this out after I started investigating, getting suspicious of her," he explained. With a heaving breath, he stared me down. I swallowed my last bite and set the plate in my lap. I chewed on the inside of my cheek before saying, "When I was 3 months old, my father left my mother to pursue a crazy dream of being a fighter. Took all the money and left her with no job, a baby son, and a 10-year-old daughter. When I was 3, my mother killed a man to feed me and my sister, so we moved in with our grandparents. When I was 13, my grandfather's best friend, who had given him a job, fired him so he could have a pretty blonde come in and work for him. So the day that my grandfather's packing everything in his office, he goes in to give his friend the one-fingered salute. Finds out that the pretty blonde he hired was my sister, and she's sucking his cock from underneath the desk." Lancaster stared. You can never trust anybody, I muttered. Lancaster's shoulders rose as air filled them. He snorted after. I'm sorry about all that. Must have been hard, he said. A couple of dogs barked somewhere across the city. Down the block, a man stood on the balcony of an apartment building. He watched the car. I like you, Mr. Lancaster, and I'd love the opportunity to work with you, but I don't know if I can kill. He smirked. I understand. I like you, buddy, but a deal's a deal. I'm afraid if you can't pull this one off, you won't be getting any of the benefits. He unlocked the car and jerked his head to the left. Saw a little powwow back there a ways. Maybe they've got some food, he said. I wish you well. My brain felt like it was on fire. Mr. Lancaster, please. I'll do anything. Mopping floors, cleaning tables, crunching numbers, whatever. I just can't kill. I'm begging you, I stammered. Lancaster smiled. You seem happy enough on the streets, don't you? You're the friendliest homeless man I've ever met. I bit my lip. Then I rubbed my eyes and watched the city through the mirror on the side. Mr. Lancaster, I squeaked out. I want to see that pantry first. Lancaster grinned like a demon and extended his hand towards me. Business is business, he said. I grabbed his hand and shook it. He had the grip of a bear. We turned around and stared down the street, coming to the interstate. A 10-minute drive took us deep into the countryside. Trees dotted the landscape. Moonlight shined through the Porsche's windows. The stars were invisible, hidden above the rows of clouds. My body thrummed and sweat covered my flesh. I tried to force away smiles as they appeared on my face. You look excited to have a job, Lancaster noticed. I let the grin show now. I'm just thinking about the pantry now, I said. In my head, I was thinking about torturing pigeons at age 6 and when I drowned a cat at age 10. I've done some terrible things, Mr. Lancaster, I muttered, and I hope you can make this one the last. He scoffed. I'm not asking you to kill Donovan, don't worry. A few minutes later, we rolled to a stop in front of a gated residence. The night was too dark, and I couldn't see what the house looked like. All I could see were the closed gates in front of us and the rows of dead trees behind them. Told my servant Monica to go out and have some fun tonight. I've sent my sons off to go spend the night with friends. We've got the house to ourselves. First, let's get done with the talking, Lancaster said. He nodded his head towards the knife in the glove box. We're gonna go inside in a moment. It's a simple plan. All I need you to do is follow me. Can't make any promises on showing you that pantry first. Sorry. We'll go upstairs to the bedroom. You'll go in with a knife and do the job. I got Donna drunk. She'll stay asleep. We'll take her body out to the backyard and have it burnt. I've got everything already prepared back there. You can shower after this if you'd like, indeed. We'll make sure everything is cleaned and check for any evidence twice. Then I'll take you out to one of my homes I haven't sold yet. You'll stay there for the night. I'll come meet you sometime tomorrow. Got it? Lancaster asked. I reached for the blade and held it up to the moonlight. The silver gleam of the blade lulled me into a trance. Just one question, I said. Go on. I turned to face him, twisting the knife in between my fingers. If you've got this so well plotted, no holes in the plan whatsoever, why do you need me to come and do the job? Lancaster seemed to shrivel up at the question. I was a wolf on the trail of a deer. Your job is less about the murder and more about what comes after. You're my alibi. You're the failsafe in case I miss a spot, he mumbled. I flicked my tongue in between my cracked lips, tasting blood. I pressed a finger to the spot. There was a tear in the skin. Then we won't miss a spot, I smiled. Lancaster chuckled. Let's get to work. Our car doors slammed behind us. We walked towards the gate. Lancaster pressed his hand to a panel to his left. Blue light appeared on its screen. It scanned his hand, and the gate swung open. We got back into the car and started up the gravel road, which led up to the driveway. As if on display, there were other cars parked on the pavement. I looked up to the starless, godless skies as I walked up to the front porch. I could already smell blood in the air. I turned around and Lancaster dug through his pocket, produced a key, and unlocked the door. His breath clouded the air. "You ready?" he whispered. I swallowed. "I think so." The front door opened with a steady squeal. The house was dark. Lancaster's footfalls ahead of me echoed through the estate. He flicked on a light switch. The living room lit itself up, the kitchen and dining room revealed in the dim background. Lancaster closed and locked the front door behind me. I noticed one thing. There was a mural wall facing me, an abstract painting of Lancaster and the woman I thought to be his wife, soon to be no more. "Follow me," Lancaster whispered. He started towards a spiral staircase, one far enough into the shade that it was almost invisible. The stairs didn't creak underneath his feet as he went up them. I followed close behind, my knife held upside down in a white-knuckled grip. An owl hooted outside. I looked up. Silver light filtered into the house from 1,000 different places, some of it reaching the staircase in the middle. The stairs went up about 3 stories, and at the top, I could see windows. It looked like there was a room at the top of the stairs, or maybe an observatory. Lancaster continued to walk. We were about 2 stories up now, and still going. My knee popped like an air pistol. Lancaster turned around, his face a pale ghost in the darkness. We waited for a second and listened. There were no other sounds. His wife was still dreaming of champagne and handsome men while I waited with a knife inside her home. "Let's keep going," said Lancaster. We reached the 3rd floor in short time. Lancaster started to creep now, inching his way down the hall. There was a room with no door. I caught a glimpse of a bookshelf and desk before we passed the room. Lancaster stopped close to the end of the hallway, reaching out a hand and pressing it to my chest. He then pointed to the door next to him and said, "This is the bedroom. Go in and go for the throat. No mess, no screams either, assuming she's blacked out enough." Now, my veins felt tight, blood thick. Lancaster wrapped his hand around the doorknob and twisted it almost without a sound. He pushed, and the door started to swing open. He left it hanging and stepped aside, gesturing for me to go in. I slipped in between the crack in the door and the frame. The room was dark, all except for the bed, splashed in moonlight. Amongst the sheets, there was a body. The woman looked just like the one in the portrait downstairs, the same regal, chiseled face. Her clothes were strewn all over the bed, a bottle of spilled vodka laying next to her. "I see you wanted to drive the car one last time before sending it back to the dealership, Mr. Lancaster," I thought, breath coming out of my nostrils and a forced laugh. My bare feet brushed against the carpet as I stepped. I got dizzier with every step closer. The scent of blood kept me from collapsing. I reached the edge of the bed. Donna's naked body was laid out beneath me. I stared for a while, my stomach growling. I put a hand on the back of her head, holding it in place. I turned the knife around so that I was holding it upright and steadied the blade to her neck, pressing slow against the flesh, body racked with tingles. I smiled as I pushed. The blade went deeper, sliding with ease like it was cutting butter. A line of crimson bled from the parting skin. The skin split further till it got stuck. Donna, still asleep, struggled to breathe. I heard choked breaths in the back of her throat. I could feel her last dreams. They were all about Donovan and rushed sex. In a moment, she was silent. The room grew cold. I dropped the knife. It stuck into the floor with a chit. I sucked the blood from my fingers. I always loved the sour taste. A thin necklace of red laced Donna's neck. I placed both hands in the sides of her face and peeled open the eyelids, revealing 2 gray marbles underneath. Then I pressed my lips to hers and started to snicker. She's beautiful, Mr. Lancaster. I held the kiss until the lights turned on. Lancaster gasped. I turned to face him, wide-eyed. He was standing in the doorway, his hand still on the light switch. He blinked a few times, then swallowed. Well, like I said, men can't keep themselves away from her. His voice was a squeal. Come here, Pat. I've got something to show you. I grinned from ear to ear. That pantry? Yes, he stuttered. He turned and started down the hallway. I waited for a moment, glancing back at Donna. She looked peaceful, sleeping, but I wondered what she would look like awake. I followed Lancaster. I stepped out of the doorframe, and his hand gripped my arm. There was a knife pointed at me now, level with my neck. I'm sorry, Pat. Business is business. I didn't say anything at first. I could see in Lancaster's eyes that he was the deer, and he knew it. He didn't want to admit it, though. Most didn't. That was something I learned quick in life. Everyone felt more comfortable believing they were the wolf. His lip shook. You wanted a homeless man over an assassin because nobody would notice the homeless man gone. Then you wouldn't even need an alibi anymore. Lancaster smirked. There was a lump in his throat. I felt the sweat on his hand against my arm. You're damn right. If you left any traces at all, nobody would know it's you. To the world, you don't exist. Lancaster pursed his lips. Business, Pat. Business. You had one job, Pat, and you did it well. You're a good worker. Wish I could keep you around. The knife shook, unstable in his grip. I started to laugh aloud. Just a chuckle at first, but it grew in intensity. Lancaster loosened his hand, then let go of my arm. His eyes were wide, jaw gaping open. I bared my teeth at him. He started to take steps backwards. I told you you can never trust anybody. My head jerked to the side, skin flushed vomit green. I rose. My head touched the ceiling. Lancaster stared up at me from beneath. His jaw was slack, and I noticed something in his eyes again. He knew he was the deer now. Lancaster couldn't deny it anymore either. He started to babble like a baby, breaths coming in shallow gasps. He pointed the knife at me, falling backwards against the wall. Lancaster almost tumbled to the floor. Please, he begged. Don't do this. He couldn't see it through the mouthful of tentacles, but I was smiling at him. I laughed while sobs escaped Lancaster's throat. Business is business, Mr. Lancaster. I latched onto him with my tendrils. Lancaster screamed. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. I want to give a huge thanks to all of my supporters over at Patreon and YouTube memberships. Your support makes these narrations possible, and I appreciate it a ton. If you'd like to join these lovely ghouls, you can head on over to my Patreon at patreon.com/clancypasta, or click the join button below to become a member. And if you'd like creepy cool shirts, make sure to head on over and check out my official merch store for some awesome tees, hoodies, stickers, and more. Alright, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great night. Cheers.